As America's trade wars plow through friend and foe alike, U.S. farmers have watched foreign markets for their agricultural goods evaporate.
We can start the fight, we can destroy the relationship that took years to build, but how to end that fight, this administration doesn't seem to have an answer.
Mark Mueller is a fourth-generation farmer in northeast Iowa. He's traveled the globe as part of the Iowa Corn Growers Association, exploring business opportunities for the Hawkeye State's top commodity.
I guess President Trump can declare that we will end this trade war, but who's going to want to necessarily pencil a deal with him when you don't know that he's going to follow that deal that he himself signed? That's what I'm concerned about.
Critics charge trade agreements have taken the scenic route under the Trump administration.
And let me tell you, if I wanted to do nothing with China...
Despite the president's recent announcement, China has agreed to purchase up to $50 billion in U.S. farm products amidst the current impasse. Free trade advocates remain skeptical.
The trade war was a big surprise to everyone. No one at all saw that coming. And at first, I think some people thought it was a joke. And then we thought, okay, there's no way anyone's going to take this down the road because of the ramifications we knew that it was going to have on our exports, on everything.
Virginia McGathy is a commodity broker at the Chicago Board of Trade and admits, despite the methods, alternatives to some of Trump's trade actions have been sparse. She adds that as the nation's top-notch agricultural efficiency has allowed the U.S. to dominate global markets, Chinese infrastructure developments have ratcheted up competition.
We would have had this problem without the tariffs.
We're going to do the market facilitation thing again this year, and as you know, it's $4 billion more, $12 billion last year, $16 billion. You're right to acknowledge that it's not going to make anybody whole.
Following 2 rounds of federal payouts to farmers affected by retaliatory tariffs from China, USDA Chief Sonny Perdue encouraged farm progress showgoers in Illinois this summer to develop new markets, prompting some to recall one geographically convenient port of call, which, despite controversy, rests at the nation's fingertips.
All markets matter. Right now, Cuba represents a $2 billion market. The United States' share of that currently is less than 10%.
Paul Johnson is executive director of the Illinois-Cuba Working Group, created through the state's General Assembly in 2013 to promote agricultural commerce with the Caribbean nation. Illinois helped facilitate congressional trade reform with the Cold War nemesis nearly 20 years ago, unleashing agricultural exports which peaked in 2008 at $700 million. But credit issues tied to the long-standing U.S. embargo against Cuba eventually gummed up the works. Farm state lawmakers have attempted legislative modifications, and President Obama's steps toward normalization held risks.
When President Trump came into office, he rolled back a lot of those initiatives. The rhetoric has completely changed. They're trying to increase the embargo, tighten the screws between the United States and Cuba.
Johnson says business sentiments have been dampened by travel restrictions and enactment of dormant provisions within decades-old legislation, expanding legal rights to seek damages in U.S. courts for property seized following Cuba's 1959 revolution.
It will take probably years to know the outcome of those lawsuits, but the aim is to freeze foreign presence in Cuba, foreign investment in Cuba.
Jose Cabañas, Cuba's first ambassador to the United States in over 50 years, says current congressionally proposed exemptions for credit under the blockade, Cuba's term for the embargo, would be a game changer.
The policy that limits fair bilateral trade simply represents the will of a very small amount of people in one particular state in this country.
Currying favor among Cuban exiles contributed to Trump's 2016 electoral victory, which he rewarded with executive action, much to the dismay of Johnson and others.
We just don't agree on the solutions. And so at some point, Cuban Americans in Florida and the President of the United States has to recognize that if this policy has worked at all. And I would ask Cuban Americans to, if they're really looking for change in Cuba, the best way to do that is not to continue a policy that has zero impact in 60 years, but to try to engage to look for change.
A recent soybean expo in Chicago gave producers an opportunity to highlight the industry's current patchwork alternative to the Chinese market.
We have Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Egypt,
Myanmar,
Philippines, Malaysia.
Right now, we need every market we can get, and Cuba is right next door.
Illinois-Cuba Working Group members see a potential $300 million market for soy as the island doubles pork production. In addition to meal, American wheat, rice, and poultry are poised to reap more benefits from 11 million mouths. The socialist nation also imports 900,000 metric tons of corn annually.
It could be a very small market, but it's just 90 miles off of the coast of the U.S.
Mark Mueller joined an envoy of commodity groups led by Paul Johnson to Cuba in 2018. He sees potential for corn exports by cultivating markets, not unlike how China and other rivals were brought on board.
And the obstacles that would keep us from doing trade with them are not physical, but political obstacles. In the last 60 years, we've gone to war with Vietnam. And then we are now one of their best suppliers of agricultural goods. You know, we've gone from mortal enemy to good friend and close trading partner. Why not do it with these guys who are, a 45-minute plane ride away?
For Market to Market, I'm Josh Buettner.